Okay, here we go. Visualizing the Jewish other, part two. This is where we left off, I believe, in our part one. I did go at great length and tell you about um, how Judaism had been personified as a woman, as synagogue in the early Middle Ages. And we looked at some other images as well. But now we're going to see what happens towards the end. And some of this I've shown you before, but it's going to add some more stuff. So synagogue evolves, and with the Gothic period, we see many images of synagogue now as a full-fledged freestanding figure. This is on Notre Dame in Paris. This is the central portal on the west end, which is the main door of Notre Dame, Paris. To the left of the door, right there, is Ecclesia, the representation of the church, and there she is. And on the right is Synagogue. So Synagogue in our later representations is blinded. So she's got something pulled down over her eyes here. Her staff, which indicates that at one time she had power, her staff is now broken. And she's looking away. So notice how Ecclesia's head is held upright and she is facing the people as they enter the church, and Synagogue wants nothing of that. So some more. So she does become fairly common in the Gothic period, which I find interesting. So here's the south transept on another French cathedral. This is in Strasbourg, and so this is not the main portal, but this is a secondary portal. And there's two doors here, as you can see. And so on either side of this, we have Ecclesia and Synagogue over here. And these have been, they're either copies or they're the originals that have been moved to a museum, but they're not in situ for sure. But nice photographs you can see. So you can see Ecclesia again, head upright, crowned, holding the staff that is a cross, and also a chalice, which represents, of course, the blood of Christ. And here's Synagogue with her broken staff again, and she's blindfolded, and in her hand she holds, it's kind of hard to see here, but it's a plaque that represents the Ten Commandments. So often that's one of her attributes is the Ten Commandments, meaning that she's clinging to the law and blind to Christ. So here are some more. Strasbourg again on the left. Magdeburg. This is one that I saw over Christmas vacation. Magdeburg. This is the same church where St. Maurice is in Germany. So, and we also have an ecclesia there as well. So the Magdeburg is holding the Ten Commandments, and she's also been blinded by a blindfold. And then here's Paris on the right again. You can see her. And I found Ecclesia and Synagogue represented in painting, although that's a little bit rarer. But here, the two figures, and you can see the same attributes with some full color. So Ecclesia on the left with a strange looking crown. I'm going to say it's a crown, but she also has a staff that's a cross, and she has a chalice. And again, Synagogue with her broken staff and holding here. You can clearly see the tablet of the Ten Commandments. It's really small, but that's it. And for style, all of these, of course, conform to Gothic figural style, very elegant, and the Gothic S curve of the figure. This is beautiful. Now, that's kind of the norm. And then you get these bizarre aberrations that start to come out where Synagogue experiences a lot more abuse. So on the left, we have Synagogue this time riding a donkey, while Ecclesia is riding on a lion. And Ecclesia again has the cross staff and the chalice and the crown. And she's riding on this dominant animal, of course, the king of beasts. But also with the lion, there's an eagle, a man, and a bull. And those are the symbols of the four evangelists. And the donkey is just, I don't know, stubbornness. But in this case, Synagogue's staff broken again, the crown slipped from her head, and there is a hand coming down from heaven holding a dagger which is going right into her head. So she's not long for this world. Oh, and on this side we have the hand coming from heaven. It looks like it has just placed the crown on her head. So you can start to see that it's developing a polemical message that seeks to vilify synagogue more and more until you get to this iconography. It's called the Living Cross, and to me, it's one of the most horrific things I've ever seen. Um, there are several of these online if you want to look for living crosses. But what we have in the center is a crucifixion. So we have Jesus on the cross, and then this arm of the cross actually becomes an arm, and the arm holds a sword which is driven down through Synagogue's head. But there she is riding on her donkey, her broken staff, her blindfold, everything is there. I'm not sure what the goat is for. It could be for an offering because the Jews used to give blood offerings, offer animals as sacrifices. Could be that. Um, so, anyway, there you go. This is the living cross. And then this is sort of an evolution. This is from a carving called a misericord, which is on the underside of a choir stall seat in churches. It's just, don't worry about it. I mean, I could explain it, but there's really no point. So it's a wooden carving in a church. And here, I believe that this is, sorry, meant to be ecclesia on the left, charging at synagogue on the right. And synagogue is riding a boar. Okay, I hope you can see that. And so that's anathema. I mean, Jewish people, one of the laws is that they don't eat pork. And so they have nothing whatsoever to do with pigs or swine or wild boars. And so here she is riding one. That would be very humiliating, very an insult to Jewish people. So there's that. Then, in this incredible painting that is done in this typical Flemish panel painting style, um, is this very strange but very beautiful painting called The Fountain of Life. This has very uncertain provenance, but now it stays in the Prado Museum in Madrid, Spain, and dates from approximately 1432. I mean, there's no signature on it, there's no date. It's just kind of been in Spain forever, since it was made, essentially. But there are many resonances with the work of Jan van Eyck here. So we have God the Father on the throne, the Virgin Mary around. There's lots and lots of stuff to pick apart and look at. But down at the bottom, this is where I want to direct your attention. So we have ecclesia and synagoga here, but instead of being females, they're now personified as males, with ecclesia on the left. I'm assuming that's who that is, with a papal tiara on. So this is the Pope, and there's lots of different clerics here. There's priests and monks, and there's even a king. So this represents the good force, the force of God. And on the left, you have the lost people, and we have synagoga here is a man with a broken staff. So many things are the same. He's blindfolded. He has a broken staff. I'm pretty sure the law is somewhere in here. But he's also got on a jeweled breastplate, which is described in the Old Testament as one of the things from the Temple of Solomon that was made, that the priest should wear this, the priest from the tribe of Levi. And these are all lost people, lost, following the poor synagogue. And there's a lot of Hebrew writing here, but it's done in this Flemish style that's just so well painted, so good. So it's too bad. Now, we're really interested in how the medieval people depicted Jews, as you know. So all the synagogues are personifications. They're not actual Jewish people. So how did they represent Jewish people? So in manuscripts, they tend to distinguish the Jews by hats often, and sometimes large noses. You'll see this, but the first device or tradition is to distinguish the Old Testament Jews in this way. So I found a couple of illustrations that I had of some Old Testament scenes. This is Saul anointing David here, and I'm assuming that this is Jesse, David's father, and some of his brothers, and one of them is wearing this cap. So the cap that we saw earlier that started off as a Phrygian cap, this kind of very loose stocking cap that draped over towards the front, somehow at some point in the Middle Ages it becomes a fully erect little cone hat that often looks like a funnel. I've heard them called funnel caps, but it just is a thing. So you have to accept it on faith that that is just an evolution of the soft Phrygian cap. So there's David's brother. And then over on this picture, also from a manuscript illumination, we have Abram. This is before his name was changed to Abraham. So it's the same guy, but just earlier in the story. And he's wearing a very nice funnel cap. Sorry, this detail was a little pixelated. I didn't realize how bad it was until I got a good look at it. So, but you can see he's got a funnel hat on. And then here's another David. So I love this picture. This is really clear and really nice. It's an illuminated initial. And David, the young kid, is playing his harp for King Saul. And King Saul has on what it is more like an in-between step between the soft Phrygian cap and the funnel hat. It's more like a cone head in red. Get a good look at what's whispering into Saul's ear. It is a devil. So when I asked you to look for devils, I had devils like this in mind. I wanted you to find a devil that in some way would look like one of the others. And if this devil doesn't look African, I don't know what does. So here he is whispering in Saul's ear, telling him lies about David, I'm sure, because Saul's got his sword out. So there you go. It's a beautiful little illumination. And Saul depicted as a medieval Jew in his little hat. So, New Testament scenes which depict Jews in opposition to Jesus. When it came to depicting Jews, the hat was the most common identifier, and it evolved from the Phrygian cap seen earlier. The next common trait was a large nose, often just one element in a very grotesque face. So, of course, you're going to see hats, but I want you to also look at noses now. And often a figure will be placed in profile so you can get a good look at that hideous nose. Like this man right here is in full profile talking to Jesus, and he's got a really large hooked nose there. And over here you've got some people tormenting Christ. I probably showed you this when we were looking at Africans, because this little guy over here with his short, curly, dark hair has been labeled as an African. Also, he's not wearing a cone hat, so he's not Jewish. And there's Jesus without a beard being tormented after his arrest. And more. It was common practice to use the medieval identifier of the cap for biblical Jews, as we've seen. So these are both Jesus brought before Pilate. I should have enlarged this one, but there's Jesus with his halo there. Pilate over here. I'm sure there's words written on his scroll that would say what the Bible says he said then. But this man behind Jesus is wearing a cone head and has a huge nose sticking out. And the other man, it seems to be African. He has dark skin and no cone head, or funnel head, or whatever you want to call them. And then over here, another manuscript illumination showing Jesus blindfolded, tied up, brought before Pontius Pilate by a group of Jews wearing the hats. And even Pontius Pilate has the hat on now. And Pontius Pilate is washing his hands as if to say, I don't want anything to do with this guy. You take care of him. And in this passion story, this chronologically even occurs before the last scene, but this is Judas going to the chief priests to see what he can get for betraying Jesus. So he goes to them and he's paid off with 30 pieces of silver. So this is a carving, a sculpture from Naumburg Cathedral in Germany. And when I think of the funnel hats, I always think of these guys because their hats are just so odd. Um, and I should also say, nobody really wore these hats. As far as I know, they did not exist. They're not real things. They're just used by artists to indicate who the Jews are, and to sort of vilify them, make it really clear. So here's Judas apparently receiving his coins, and a bunch of Jews talking about it. Then there are several illustrations. I mean, I held up that book the other day and showed you. I have this large book with just full of pictures, just documenting every instance of an illustration of a Jew. And so, I mean, I could show you tons of these, but any Jew in society that was illustrated for any purpose would be indicated as a Jew, because it's important. You have to distinguish them. You can't just treat them like other people. So they're always given these hats. This was an entertainer, a Minnesänger, and I think he's appearing before a bishop or something here. So he's probably doing some entertaining. And over here, another guy in another little cone hat, funnel hat. This one is great too. Here's another good devil for you. This is a medieval Faust. So Faust is the legend of a man who made a deal with the devil. He wanted something and the devil promised it to him, but in exchange, this man had to give his soul to the devil. So you could have this joy here on earth, whatever it is you wanted, in exchange for your immortal soul. And you can see who's in league with the devil here. So this is the devil. This man, who seems to be a monk because his tonsure, is making a deal with a Jew, but the Jew is being coached by the devil. So we've got 3 Jewish men here, and the devil also with a big nose. Now, this has nothing to do with, well, it kind of does have something to do with representing the other. But I showed you the picture of synagogue writing on the boar, and I said this is like a huge insult. So then, as the hatred for Jews escalates, the hatred of Jews continued. Many polemical pieces were made to express the negativity. One of them was a so-called Judenzahl, particularly distasteful to the Jews who abstained from eating pork. So in this iconography, and these are 2 Judenzahls that I've actually seen in person, so there are others, and they also appeared in print form. The iconography is a pig, and underneath the pig, or it's a sow, so it's a female pig who's recently given birth, there are Jewish people, often clearly marked as Jews, sucking on her tits, so, or teats, or breasts, or her mammary glands. What could be more distasteful? And here, this man behind is lifting up the sow's leg. It looks like he had what was a Jewish hat on that is broken off. Yeah. And this one is in Magdeburg here. So this is the same church where that ecclesia and synagogue was. Well, I just showed you the synagogue, and the same church that is the Church of Saint Maurice in Magdeburg. And on the right, it's a little church in Wittenberg. There you go. Anyway, so this was fairly common. There are many examples of Judenzahl. So contemporary Jews were often forced to wear identifying badges or put in ghettos. That just means a neighborhood where their world was restricted. Sometimes it was fenced, but they often were told where they could live and where they could not live, because heaven forbid you should have a Jew living next door to you, where you might have to, I don't know, smell their food cooking. So that's ghettoization Yeah, this is the original ghetto, folks. Um, so here it shows a couple of people from a manuscript wearing these circular badges, which is one of the identifiers. And then these badges look like the tablets of the Ten Commandments. So that's another trope, another device that gets used as identifiers. And then, of course, when the Nazis came into power, they made the Jews wear a six-pointed star. So I'd like to say this thing was in the Middle Ages only, but we know better. So, as sort of the conclusion here, I'm including one of the many reproductions of the ritual murder. And these were mass produced on, printed on paper, circulated around. And it's the kind of story that you read about in the Chaucer, and the kind of story that would inflame the public to go in and start just killing the Jews, because they really believed that Jewish people were taking their children, their sweet Christian children, and using them in a blood sacrifice to get their blood, to use their blood in one of their religious ceremonies, because nobody understood what was going on. So this is one of the many illustrations of this, and you can see these evil Jewish people cutting the boy. There's a basin down here to collect the blood. We have a cone head over here. We have a woman and this man. They're wearing the badges. They're identified clearly as Jews. This guy whose back is turned even has his badge on the back, just so we're not confused. We know that he's evil, evil Jew. Now, of course, this is upsetting. It's upsetting to think that so-called civilized people would believe this kind of stuff. And today, when I went into the internet to find that picture that I just showed you, I found this, and it made me completely ill. This was recently painted. It was painted by an Italian artist this year. He posted it on the internet, and it is an illustration of this event that supposedly happened in Italy, where the Jewish community took a child and took his blood and used it in preparing their matzah for Passover. It has not been proven. It has been disproven. I mean, there was no proof at all. The child, in absentia, I mean, there was no body. I think he went missing. Who knows what happened? Was sainted, and then he was de-sanctified in the 1960s, I believe. So, I mean, the Vatican saw no basis for turning this little kid into a saint. He was just a missing kid. But this artist apparently still believes this, and he has a lot of followers who believe it too. So he posted this painting on Facebook, and then Facebook censored it by sort of blocking out, I think, the picture of the child and the cutting of him. I found this picture because there was a link to it on the artist's website to an article that was actually published today in an Italian journal. And there are so many comments with people being angry about the censorship, these fanatics believing that this still happened and that the Jews are evil and that the Jews are killing their children. I wouldn't be at all surprised if they're not blaming the Jews for the COVID-19 virus. And the thing that amazed me is that with what's been going on in Italy, why are they looking for pain? Why are they looking for another source of anger? And this is what made me ill. So anyway, there you go. I wish I could say that the awful depictions of Jews is a thing of the past, but sorry, it's not. So it's one of the reasons I wanted to teach this class, is so that um, if anything, we could all learn to be more tolerant and accepting of people who are different than us. So that's it.